The United States of America is ready to deliver the final decisive blow to Iran to end the war. The Pentagon is developing military options for a final strike on Iran, which may include both the use of ground forces and a massive bombardment of the entire energy sector and more. This was reported today by sources from Axios, against the backdrop of strange statements by Donald Trump that Iranian officials are allegedly begging for a peace agreement in private conversations, but cannot do so publicly because they fear that the Iranian people would simply destroy their leadership for such a decision. At the same time, Donald Trump is demanding extremely tough measures in order to meet the previously announced 46-week war timeline. But experts are convinced that without some drastic change in war tactics, a quick victory is simply impossible. And it is worth noting here that the US is currently deploying the 82nd Airborne Division, which may take part in a landing in Iran. Meanwhile, the oil market is on the rise again, as analysts are convinced that negotiations between the US and Iran have failed. My name is Pechiy. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start this episode, I ask you to support the work of this YouTube channel with your donation, subscription, or sponsorship on YouTube. All the links and details on how to do this are in the description of this video. I will be grateful for any support you can give. Well, you can support at the end of this episode if you think it was interesting and useful for you. And besides that, subscribe to my Telegram channel Pechiy News. The link is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as it comes in. So, today in Washington, it was reported that the Pentagon has developed military options for a final so-called decisive strike on Iran, which may include the use of ground forces and massive bombardment. It's important to understand that Trump will need to raise the stakes in this war. A sharp military escalation will become more likely if there is no progress in diplomatic negotiations, and in particular if the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Well, at the moment there isn't a single sign that Iran is ready to back down. Some American officials believe that a devastating show of force to end the hostilities will create more leverage in peace negotiations, or simply give Trump a reason to point to it and declare victory. At the same time, Iran also has ways to respond, so the final move by the US could actually intensify the fighting rather than bring it to a dramatic end. Nevertheless, Axios claims there are at least 4 main options for this final strike that Trump could choose from. The first option is an invasion or blockade of Kark Island, the main center for Iranian oil exports. The second option is an invasion of Larak Island, which helps Iran strengthen its control over the Strait of Hormuz. This strategically important outpost houses Iranian bunkers, combat boats capable of blowing up trucks, and radars that monitor movements in the Strait of Hormuz. And it is near this island that tankers pass, that Iran still allows to pass through the strait. And it is from Larak Island that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps threatens other vessels. So, in fact, taking control of this island could partly reopen the Armutsky Strait. The third option is the capture of the strategically important islands of Abdullah, Abu Musa, and 2 smaller islands located near the western entrance to the strait, which are controlled by Iran but are also claimed by the United Arab Emirates. Abu Musa Island is notable because discussion about it isn't limited to Americans. I'll explain what I mean a little later. Well, in fact, again, this will allow control over one of the entrances to the strait. And the fourth option is blocking or capturing ships carrying exports from Iran in the eastern part of the Hormuz Strait. Although up to now Trump has instead lifted sanctions on Iranian oil, and the American military simply turns a blind eye to the passage of Iranian tankers carrying Iranian oil. But the thing is, these aren't all the scenarios. The Pentagon stated that the American military has also prepared plans for ground operations deep inside Iranian territory to seize highly enriched uranium stored at nuclear facilities. Instead of the government carrying out such a complex and risky operation, the US could launch large-scale airstrikes on nuclear facilities. Well, to try to prevent Iran from accessing these materials and essentially to bury this highly enriched uranium underground forever, Axios claims that Trump is ready for escalation if negotiations with Iran do not yield tangible results in the near future. Trump may first carry out his threat by bombing power plants and energy facilities in Iran, for which I remind you Tehran has threatened massive retaliatory actions throughout the Persian Gulf. And if Iran goes through with this, the US may start those very ground operations, as well as put to the test the threats of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, who previously threatened to enter the war if Iran attacks their energy sector. At the same time, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt warned that Trump is ready to strike harder than ever before if an agreement cannot be reached. Here is her quote. "The president is not bluffing and is ready to unleash hell on Iran. Iran should not miscalculate again. Any violence after this will happen because the Iranian regime refuses to make a deal." In parallel with the attempt at negotiations, the US has, as is known, sent troops to the region, and additional reinforcements are expected to arrive in the coming days and weeks, including several squadrons of fighter jets and thousands of military personnel. One Marine expeditionary unit will arrive this week, while another is already in the process of being deployed. The command of the 82nd Airborne Division of the U.S. Army has been ordered to deploy an infantry brigade consisting of several thousand troops to the Middle East. And here there's an interesting, I would even say symbolic detail. The troops are decorated. The troops of the 82nd Division of the U.S. Army served as the initial vanguard of American forces during Operation Desert Storm and the subsequent First Gulf War in 1991. They also played a key role in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. As early as 2018, rapid response forces were formed from this division. Their first deployment took place in Iraq in January 2020 after the attack on the US Embassy in Baghdad. The unit was also used during the evacuation from Afghanistan in 2021. Interestingly, the 82nd Airborne Division was also deployed to Europe in 2022 after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. On the other hand, Iranian officials said they do not trust Trump's negotiation attempts and see them as a ploy to launch surprise attacks. This Wednesday, Speaker of Parliament Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf stated that Iranian intelligence believes the US, with the support of one of the countries in the region, is preparing an operation to occupy one of Iran's islands. And here, most likely, Ghalibaf is hinting at the United Arab Emirates and their claims to Abu Musa Island, which we mentioned a little earlier. So in fact, it's the United Arab Emirates and their claims to Abu Musa Island plus two smaller islands. It is reported that Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey are still trying to organize a meeting between representatives of the US and Iran. Although, let me remind you, such talks were already announced for this week. Well, so far it doesn't look like they're happening. They are supposed to take place by the end of this week. Iran rejected the initial list of US demands. It does not rule out the possibility of negotiations in general, but says that basically the list of demands is nonsense. The full list of demands from the United States of America to Iran, and by the way, there are 15 of these demands I published yesterday in the Pechiy News Telegram channel. The link's in the description. Consider subscribing. The problem is that Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps militants are simply afraid to negotiate. At the same time, Trump has already found an explanation for why the Iranians are not entering into negotiations. Trump stated that the Iranian negotiators are strange because they beg Washington for a deal but publicly say something completely different, and I quote, "They are begging us to make a deal, which they should do since they have been destroyed militarily with no chance of coming back. And yet they publicly claim that they are only considering our offer. That's not right. They'd better get serious about it as soon as possible before it's too late. Because once that happens, there will be no way back, and that won't be good." At the same time, Trump stated that the Iranians want a peaceful deal, but, quote, "are afraid to talk about it because they believe their own citizens will kill them." And in the end, Donald Trump said today that Tehran allegedly personally offered to make him Iran's supreme leader, the leader, but Trump refused this. And then he said that he might run for president of Venezuela. Well, something like that. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. Let me remind you, if you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation using the links and details in the description of this video or by using the QR code on your screens. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.